Meanwhile, Porco is completely unaware that he's about to rescue little kids instead of female students. So Porco triumphantly gets on his plane, Savoia. He walks along the pier and gets on his plane while avoiding the rear wing. Take a look at these two pictures and compare the two. Look at the propeller next to the cockpit. The propeller on the picture below is very close to the water surface. So the plane sinks as Porco gets on the plane because of his weight, and the drought gets deeper. It is a subtle description, but I think Miyazaki does it beautifully. Porco avoids the rear wing because he's too fat and doesn't have enough space to walk. He skillfully maintains his balance to avoid obstacles. This behavior is extremely human. The depiction of the Savoia sinking as Porco steps in captures the physics of the situation. Miyazaki is completely in control of both human element and the physics in this single cut. That's why this scene looks so real. You can see the same level of accuracy in the characters in the anime film in this corner of the world. But in this case, Miyazaki combines the human and the inanimate to great effect. It looks so real that you feel like you want to go there. After Porco gets on the Savoia, he turns the crank handle really fast. You hear a heavy whirring sound, and Porco steps on the lever with his foot to turn on the engine. This handle he's turning is like a gigantic version of a flywheel. It's made of iron or steel. I'm not sure about the material, but basically you turn this flywheel sufficiently until you have enough rotational energy. And then you step on the lever to transfer the energy to the engine. So I guess you could say it's like a manual self-starter in a car. The reason why Porco uses his foot to move the lever is because usually this is an engineer's job, not his. Engineers do that kind of thing, but since he always attacks the air pirates by himself, he's gotten used to being alone. So much so that he has even started using his foot. Maybe he felt frustrated in the beginning, but he must have gotten used to it. The engine starts and releases a huge amount of smoke, which chokes him after he fastens his seatbelt. Porco's small propeller begins to rotate. Here. It's the propeller here. The propeller begins to rotate and Porco fastens his seatbelt. In the pre-lecture, I explained that this is a pump that lifts the fuel. But an acquaintance of mine told me, well, the reason why I said it was a windmill type pump is because it says so in this book, Art of Porco Rosso. And it even says windmill type pump in the storyboard. So I simply believed it. But to be precise, this is called a dynamo, a kind of generator. The big propeller rotates and activates the smaller one. Like a bicycle dynamo, it generates a tiny amount of energy when rotated by wind. When the electricity surges, it starts the motor in the pump. In other words, you run the motor by lifting the fuel from the fuel tank inside Savoia. Okay. Now, this is the scene I had a hard time understanding myself. Porco pushes the throttle and the engine starts. This is the front, by the way. Porco puts his hand on the throttle and pushes it. You'll see that this is the engine output. But you'll also see that he's using his thumb to move the other lever, beside it with a red bulb on it. On the storyboard, it is described as a timing lever, which doesn't really make much sense. Some experts told me that it's probably a mixture control level. I'm not a plane nerd like Miyazaki, so I got the information through SNS. But this is the lever to control the ratio of fuel to air before sending the fuel into the engine. The smoke came out because the fuel ratio was too high. This lever is to lower the amount of fuel to achieve perfect combustion. He pushes the lever to control the fuel ratio. By doing so, the ratio shifts from rich to lean. Maybe the bikers would understand what I'm talking about. But some people say that because this is called the timing lever, it's there to control the timing of the fuel injection. So when the cylinder is moving inside the engine, this lever sets the timing to inject the fuel. It speeds up the process as the rotation of the engine speeds up to prevent knocking. But honestly, I don't know who to believe. So, again, the plane sinks as he gets on it. He turns the handle, kicks the lever, starts the engine. Propellers on the side rotate. He opens the throttle and moves the mixture level or the timing lever. This sequence is so fluid and pleasant to watch, and it is so cool. The creators of Mobile Suit Gundam experimented with drawing the behavior of a pilot in a cockpit and came up with various sequences. They were usually something to do with flipping the switches in front of them. They were realistic and well thought out, but not unique enough. Whereas in this scene, Porco uses his whole body. He tunes up the engine and finally opens the throttle at the end in order to increase the output. Everything is so rhythmical. Boom, 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 boom. It's perfect with the music. You know, it's so well made that I think it's as good as the attack scene of Thunderbirds or Go. After he does that, after that windmill rotates, Porco takes the loose rope that moored the ship to the pier and throws it onto the pier, just using his left hand. And the way he throws the rope is nice. It's as if he is being careful not to get it wet, so that it won't rot. He throws it onto the pier just in from the edge where it won't fall into the water. You can tell that this is one of his daily routines. There's a lot of excitement in it, and I think it's so cool. Anyway, so he finally speeds up. Porco's seaplane, Savoia, speeds up and leaves the secret base. You would think that it is going to leave the water and take off in an instant, but it doesn't. It has a hard time taking off. It lifts once, but fails twice. This guy. I think I'll put this aside for now. I only touched it once, and one of the pillars is already broken. I don't want to touch it too much. The plane doesn't rise at once. Those of you who recorded the film, check again. It rises once but drops twice. And this is the splash when the plane bounces on the water. The reason why it bounces before taking off is because it's a seaplane. A seaplane is basically more a ship than an airplane. It is usually built by the shipwright. Do you remember Mr. Caproni in The Wind Rises, the Italian Caproni? When Caproni first built the seaplane, he worked with his older brother and two shipwrights. No one else was involved. So that means they were able to build it without getting any help from airplane experts. Curtis R3C0, on the other hand, it's not a seaplane, it's a float plane. It's a plane with a float. So, as long as it floats on the water, you don't have to think much about the strength of the plane itself. Whereas this seaplane must withstand the water pressure with the lower part of its body. So, it's basically very strong. And it's usually very heavy as well. On top of that, Porco's plane has a bad engine, And other than that, take a look at this. It has swept back wings. And as you can see by looking at Curtis's R3C0, aircraft in this era mostly had straight wings. It's easier to generate lift when the wings are straight. That was the norm in this era, whereas Porco's plane has backswept wings like this, as if he belonged to the post-World War II period. Plus, it's a monoplane, not a biplane, because he needs to speed up. Compared to Curtis's R3C0, the wings are a lot bigger, although these two aircrafts belong to the same size category. It's heavy and slow to take off. There's a scene where Porco struggles to take off after the plane has been modified in Milan. This is because of his own weight and the swept back wing, which makes it harder to control and fly the aircraft. It's just so hard to take off in this plane.